Hi, so we're back on this, page 34, from The Wizards of Once. I've recorded this so many times today and then something has gone wrong and I've had to start again. So this is take 4, I think. So here we go. And already I'm on the wrong page. It's just not going well at all today. Silence again. You do realise that's a saucepan, said Luther. No ordinary saucepan, said Tsar, and then he took a deep breath before he made his shocking announcement. This particular saucepan is made out of iron. Most of the wizards took a horrified step backwards. The sprites let out shrieks of alarm. Luther alone refused to be impressed. In fact, he laughed so hard Tsar thought he might fall over. This is too good. You're going to fight a witch with a saucepan, sneered Luther. You're no great leader. Tsar, you're a liar and a loser. Our father is ashamed of you, and now I know why you're so keen to steal magic from a witch. It's the spelling competition at the winter celebration tonight, and you can't do magic. Tsar can't do magic, taunted Luther. Tsar turned red with embarrassment, then white with anger. The fact he couldn't do magic yet was one of those hidden sores that you didn't want anyone else to see. Wizard children were not born into magic. Their magic came in when they were about 12. Tsar was 13, and his magic still had not come in. He had tried doing magic. For countless hours he had tried. Really simple things, like moving stuff with his mind. But it was as if it were a muscle he didn't really have. Relax, everyone said. Relax and it will happen. But it was like trying to move something with arms that just weren't there. And recently he had been beginning to worry, what if it never came in? It was an unlikely calamity, but what a disgrace to the world, the whole family it would be, if a child had been born to the king enchanter who had no magic. The thought of it made him feel a little sick. Poor little baby Tsar, crooned Luther cruelly. Thinks he's such a big boy, but he can't do any magic whatsoever. My magic will come in, hissed Tsar, but in the meantime, I swear, he spat, eyes so small with anger that he could barely see out of them. I swear I'm going to catch a witch, and I will squeeze so much magic out of that witch, Luther, that I will blast you out of existence. Yeah, grinned Luther. He reached into his rucksack and took out one of his staffs. A wizard's staff was about the size of a walking stick, and the wizards concentrated magic through them. Your spelling won't work on me when I am carrying iron, roared Tsar, rushing forward to hit Luther with the saucepan. Which was perfectly true, but most unfortunately, in his charge forward, Tsar tripped over a long tangle of bramble, and his gloved hands lost their grip on the saucepan, and went sailing over Luther's head and into the undergrowth. Luther pointed his staff at Tsar and whispered the word of a spell under his breath. Luther's body trembled as the magic quivered through him and channeled out of his hand into the staff, which concentrated into one quick, fierce, hot bolt of magic that blasted out of the end of the staff, hitting Tsar on the legs. Tsar stopped mid-charge, his feet stuck to the ground by Luther's spell. Laughed Luther's followers. Remove the spell! Shouted Tsar, struggling to shift his feet, but it was as if they had turned to lead. No, I don't think I will, smiled Luther. Tsar lost his temper. He snapped his fingers. Meow! Before anyone could blink or think, King Cat launched himself at Luther, huge jaws agape, 60 stone of greeny grey killing machine. Screaming in terror, Luther was pinned up against a tree trunk, looking aghast at the great cat's nightmare face, inches away from his own, and what felt like 4 kitchen knives sticking into his shoulder. They had already drawn blood. None of Luther's own sprites or animals had time to move or protect him. One more click of my fingers, spat Tsar, and King Cat will take your head off. Cheat, panted Luther. You cheated. You're not supposed to use animals to attack a fellow wizard. Remove the spell. Luther was now every bit as angry as Tsar himself. What could he do? He pointed his staff at Tsar and removed the spell so that Tsar's feet could move, and then Tsar made a signal to King Cat to let Luther go. You're mad. A lunatic, raged Luther as King Cat dropped him, and Luther gazed in astonishment at the 4 neat bleeding puncture wounds in his shoulder. Your animal has bitten me. If you dare to enter that spelling competition, I am going to annihilate you. Luther turned to Tsar's followers. Who wants to come with me rather than staying here with this silly little madman and his stupid witch trap? Shouted Luther. One by one, Tsar's followers backed away from Tsar and towards Luther and climbed on board their wolves or snowcats, muttering things like, sorry, Tsar, this is a bit too crazy even for you. We shouldn't be here. If witches aren't extinct, they are bad magic, Tsar. You see, crowed Luther triumphantly. A great leader has to have someone to lead, and no one wants to follow a magicless lunatic. Good luck with meeting your witch, loser boy. And then Luther rode away on the back of his wolf, followed by most of the other wizards. Cowards! Roared Tsar, nearly crying, he was so angry. He ran into the undergrowth to retrieve the saucepan and shook his fist at their departing backs. We'll show you, we'll catch a witch, we'll take magic from it, and then we'll be so magic we'll fly without wings. Tsar turned with a sigh to the bedraggled remains of his followers. Why did Luther always have to spoil everything? Tsar had hardly anyone left now, only 3 young wizards whose magic hadn't come in either. A girl called Heliotrope and 2 boys, Rush and Darkish. A large lad with even larger ears who had reached the age of 17 without showing any signs of magic whatsoever, and who was slightly on the dim side. Oh, bother, he's left me with the losers, tutted Tsar. You what? I say, Tsar, that's a bit unfair, protested Rush. Will we really fly without wings? Said Darkish, flapping his big arms up and down. Of course we will, promised Tsar, rubbing his hands together excitedly, for Tsar could never stay down for long. Those cowards are going to be so sorry that they left. Darkish, you're the biggest, so you need to do the most digging, ordered Tsar. Rush, I'm afraid we're going to have to wound you a little to tempt the witch into the trap, and if anything goes wrong... I thought you said this mission was completely safe, said Rush. Nothing is entirely safe, Tsar backtracked quickly. Life is dangerous, isn't it? After all, you could just get killed climbing a tree, like I nearly was just now. This is not climbing a tree, sputtered Caliban from above as the 3 young wizards began to obey Tsar's orders. This is intentionally trespassing on warrior territory, trying to set a trap for the scariest life form that has ever walked the planet. Caliban sighed. Nobody was listening to him. Caliban perched rigid on the tree branch, with his head under his wing, as if, for as long as he buried his head under there, if he couldn't see the future would not happen. But of course, the old bird knew that would not work. 2. Chapter 2. A Warrior Called Wish. Meanwhile, a stout and terrified warrior pony with 2 young warriors sitting on its back had set out secretly from Iron Warrior Fort under cover of darkness. Warriors were not supposed to leave the fort after nightfall, for the warriors were petrified of the magic that was out in the forest. Iron Warrior Fort was the largest fort you could ever possibly imagine, with 13 watchtowers and encircled by 7 great ditches cut into the hill. How scared these warriors must be of everything that is magic, to have built such a mighty fort, white as bone, with little slit windows like the blink of a malevolent cat. But nonetheless, this particular warrior pony had managed to sneak out without the nervous sentries that clanked their way along the fort walls spotting it. And perhaps, just perhaps, those sentries were right to be anxiously straining their eyes into the endless green wilderness that surrounded and engulfed them, watching, peering, struggling to see what might be out there. For something bad was watching the pony from high up in the treetops. It was too early to tell what that something was. Many, many bad things live in the bad woods. It could have been a cat monster. It could have been a werewolf. It could have been a roger. Rogers are a bit like ogres, but a lot more scary. Time will tell what it was. But it wasn't surprising that the pony had caught the something's attention. For the pony was cantering far too noisily through the undergrowth, and bumping along on its back were a skinny little warrior princess and her assistant bodyguard, Bodkin. They were wearing red cloaks over their armour, which made them shine out like stars in the dark green forest. Short of wearing a big archery target on the top of their heads or a sign saying, "Eat me, O hungry monsters of the bad woods," nothing could really have made them stand out more. The princess had a very long and regal name, but everybody called her Wish. Warrior princesses, of course, ought to be impressively tall and absolutely terrifying, like Wish's mother, Queen Sycorax. But Wish was neither scary nor large. She had a curious little face that was rather too interested in the world around her, and hair that stuck out too wispily, as if she'd accidentally hit some unnoticed bit of static electricity. A black patch covered her right eye. She seemed to be searching for something with the other. "We're not supposed to come out here on our own in the day, let alone in the night time," said Bodkin, the assistant bodyguard, looking nervously over his shoulder. Bodkin wasn't the regular bodyguard of this weird little princess. Her proper bodyguard had fallen ill with a nasty autumn cold. Bodkin had landed the highly sought-after role as understudy for a royal bodyguard, even though he was only 13 years old, because he was very studious and he had come out top of his class in the advanced arts of bodyguarding exams. However, this was the first time he had done the actual job, and he was finding it a good deal harder than he had thought it would be. The princess wouldn't do what she was told, for starters, and although he studied very hard, to be honest, Bodkin didn't really like fighting very much. And the thought that he might actually be in a real situation where there was a possibility of violence was making him feel a little sick. "There could be werewolves or cat monsters or giants out here," said Bodkin. "And then there's the bears and the jaguars and the wizards and the roggerettes, and even dwarves can get nasty when they're hunting in parks." "Oh, don't be so gloomy, Bodkin," replied the princess. "We'll go back as soon as we find my pet. This is all your fault anyway. You frightened him when you said you'd report him to my mother, and so he completely panicked and ran away." "I was only trying to stop you from getting into any more trouble," said Bodkin. "You're not allowed pets. They're against warrior rules." Bodkin was a boy who really believed in the rules. He was hoping to work his way up from being an assistant bodyguard to a household defender, and you didn't do that by breaking any rules. "And you're most particularly not allowed this kind of pet." "He must be terrified," worried Wish. "We couldn't possibly leave him running away on his own in the terrors of the bad woods, all alone and scared, and he might be chased by raving fang mouths or something." "Aha!" she said with triumphant relief. "There he is." She hauled on the pony reins to bring him to a halt and picked up something that was scurrying through the undergrowth. "Thank goodness!" She stroked whatever it was gently and made soothing noises as if to say, "Don't worry, it's fine, you're safe now, you're with me." The sort of noises that might calm a petrified dog or cat or rabbit that had been running scared and all alone through the bad woods after the setting of the autumn sun. The pet was not a dog or a cat or even a rabbit. "That pet of yours is a spoon," objected Bodkin. The assistant bodyguard was right. The pet was indeed a large iron dinner spoon. "So he is," said Wish, as if she'd only just noticed, getting back upon the pony and drying off the spoon with the end of her sleeve. "And that spoon is alive, princess, it's alive," said Bodyguard, giving a little shiver of horror as he looked at the spoon, "which means that it is an entirely damned magical object. Haven't you ever seen the signs all over Warrior Fort? Absolutely no magic, no enchanted objects, no animal indoors. All magics must be reported to a higher authority so that reports can be made and the magic got rid of." "I'm not really sure if he's magic exactly," said Wish. "Hopefully, he's just a little bendy." "Of course he's magic!" snapped Bodkin. "Ordinary spoons do not jump up and down to get you to stroke them. Ordinary spoons just lie quietly and feed you your dinner. Look at this one. It's bowing to me." "So he is," said Wish proudly. "Isn't that clever?" Bodkin breathed very heavily indeed. "This is not clever. This is breaking so many rules it's difficult to know where to begin. Where did you find the spoon?" "He just turned up in my room one day like a wild mouse or something, so I fed him some milk and he's been hanging out with me ever since, which was nice because before he came I was a wee bit lonely. Haven't you ever been lonely, Bodkin?" "Well, I have actually," admitted Bodkin. "Ever since I did so well on the exams and got appointed your personal assistant bodyguard, All the other assistant bodyguards said I had got above myself, and now they're not talking to me. And hang on a second! That's not the point! The point is, said Bodkin, if an enchanted object turns up unexpectedly in a warrior fort, you really ought to tell your mother, Queen Sycorax, immediately so she can remove its magic, not adopt it as your pet. At the mention of Queen Sycorax's name, the spoon swayed from side to side, as if terror-stricken, and then hopped into Wish's waistcoat, hiding behind her body armour so that only the bowl that was its face was staring out, lit up with a strange glowing magical light. Look, you've scared him again, Wish replied. The thing is, I don't want his magic removed. It's a completely painless process, said Bodkin. But he doesn't want to do that, said Wish. All right then, said Bodkin, folding his arms. In which case, you have to let the spoon go back into the wild. He belongs out here in this scary jungle with all the other monsters and the magical things. These are his people. I'm putting my foot down. You absolutely cannot take him back to the fort with you. You cannot keep the spoon as your pet. It's against the rules, and you'll get into the most terrible trouble if anyone finds out. Wish looked very sad indeed. But I kind of identify with the spoon because he's like me. He doesn't fit in with all the other spoons. He doesn't fit in with the other spoons because he's alive, Princess. He's alive, interrupted Bodkin. And all the other warriors ignore me, Wish carried on. You and this spoon are my only two friends. If I lose the spoon, that just leaves you. Technically speaking, Princess, I can't be your friend either because you are the princess and I am a servant, and those are the rules, explained Bodkin. Well, in which case, if I let the spoon go, I will be losing my only friend, said Wish. Okay, Wish. Bodkin was so upset that he forgot to call her princess. It was time for some stern words. I like you. I know you mean well, but let's face it, the reason you don't have many friends is, well, you're a bit weird. And weird doesn't go down well in the warrior fort. You need to try and be more normal. And the first step to being normal is to get rid of a magic spoon. Wish tried one last desperate attempt. But my mother has enchanted objects herself. What about this, then? Said Wish. To Bodkin's horror, Wish drew a large ornamental sword from her scabbard. It wasn't like an ordinary sword. It had a very dirty, old-fashioned hilt, and even beneath the greenish grime that covered it, you could see that it was beautifully designed, with intertwining leaves and mistletoe, and the leaves of other sacred trees twining all over it. On one side of the blade was carved the words, in very fancy, curly, old-fashioned script, "Once there were witches." And when Wish turned the blade over, the other side was engraved, "But I killed them." "Where did you get that sword?" said Bodkin in awed tones. "Well, it was quite odd, actually. I found it lying in the main courtyard yesterday afternoon, and it didn't seem to belong to anyone, so I picked it up." "Didn't you hear the announcement at breakfast this morning about how a very valuable sword had gone missing from your mother's dungeons? Did you not guess it might be this sword? Did you not wonder if picking things up that didn't belong to you might be stealing?" "Yes, I did," admitted Wish, stroking the sword longingly. "But I was just going to hang on to it for a while longer, pretending it was mine. I'm so ordinary and it's so special, and it would be lovely to own something special, don't you think?" "No, I do not think. Thinking is dangerous. The defenders of the royal household are turning the fort upside down looking for this sword, and you've stolen it," goggled Bodkin. "I haven't stolen it. I borrowed it. I was just about to give it back, but then you frightened the spoon, and I thought we might need something special to protect us if we were going into the bad on our own. I have a very strong feeling that it might be an enchanted sword," ended Wish. "Even my mother has enchanted objects, which means that they must be all right." "Your scary mother isn't keeping that sword as a pet," cried Bodkin, waving his long thin arms around. "You don't keep pets in dungeons. She's locked it up in the dungeons to keep it safe." Wish looked at the sword in a slightly worried way, as if this was only just occurring to her. Oh, yeah. Now I come to think of it, you could be right about that. It did seem kind of out of character for my mother. She doesn't really like anything magic, does she? Where have you been living for the past 13 years? Cried Bodkin. There are whopping great signs up all over the fort. You can't have missed them. Your mother loathes magic. She hates the magic. She has sworn never to rest till she has rid the entire forest of everything magic at all. Wish furrowed her brow. Yes, I have to say I really don't understand that. Surely just because some magic is bad, it doesn't mean that all magic is bad, really, does that? You're not supposed to understand, screeched Bodkin. You're a warrior! You're just not supposed to be asking questions. It's very simple. You're just supposed to be obeying the warrior rules. Wish suddenly looked dejected. The spoon, now standing on the top of her head, drooped. Bother, you're right, said Wish sadly. I've messed up again, haven't I, Bodkin? You most certainly have. And then he added hurriedly, Your Highness. For in the excitement of the situation, he had forgotten the warrior rules about how to correctly address royalty. This was the problem with Wish. Whenever you spent any time with her, you found yourself breaking rules without even realising it. If my mother ever finds out about this, she's going to be hoping mad, isn't she? Said Wish, even sadder still. Absolutely hoping, agreed Bodkin, giving a little shiver at the thought of it. Oh, Bodkin, I wish I was normal like everyone else. What can I do to put everything right again? Bodkin gave a huge sigh of relief, for it looked like at least the princess was beginning to see sense. Okay, don't be sad. All is not lost, he said, giving Wish a little pat on the shoulder to cheer her up. You didn't mean to do the wrong thing, but you need to release the spoon into the wild right now and take the sword back to the fort immediately, and you have to stop doing things like this and stop behaving like a normal warrior princess and... Hang on, what was that? There was a sudden noise above them, like the snapping of a twig when something brushes up against it. Excuse me. They'd been so busy arguing they had forgotten that they were not in the safety of the Iron Warrior Fort, about to tuck into a splendid dinner, for warriors were very keen on their food. They were all alone in the Bad Woods after dark, and for the first time they realised they were being watched. I mentioned, did I not, at the beginning of this chapter, that something bad was watching them, quite quiet and dangerous, up in the treetops. A cold feeling came over the back of Wish's neck, where the hairs pricked up like the quills on a hedgehog. She looked all around at the black silent trees, the branches twisting gnarled like the knobbliest of goblins' fingers. She looked up, and she could not see anything, only perhaps a certain darkening and a shimmering thickening of the air above them, as if that air was choked with something awful, as indeed it was. And the coldness radiating out of the heart of that shining density was a coldness you had never felt before. Colder than the coldest depths of the northern ocean, colder than icicles, colder than polar caps, colder even than death itself. The freezing mist of the wildwoods' ancient past crept under Wish's armours and sank like death into her bones. Was it Wish's imagination, or did the very air above them seem to be grinning? Wish pulled down the visor on her helmet. The spoon hopped up on top of Wish's head and sniffed the air around them. Suddenly he went rigid, as if sensing something terrible, and dived down into Wish's armour to hide. Run, pony, run! Squealed Wish, and the exhausted little pony started violently and broke into a shambling, terrified, wobbling gallop. And anybody watching would have thought that they were mad, for it looked like they were running away from nothing at all. But there was definitely something very odd going on. Wish and Bodkin could see nothing above them except for dark night sky, stars and trees, but something about the way the tree branches were moving suggested that an invisible presence was hurtling against them. And the air rushing above them was so cold that it burned the top of Wish's forehead, and as the pony galloped faster and faster, the wind blowing directly behind them began to make an odd noise, like no wind that Wish had ever heard before. Now you see, Bodkin, aren't you glad I brought the sword with me? I thought we might need it, panted Wish, trying not to panic. Glad! We could be sitting right now in front of our dinner safely in the dining room in Warrior Fort, and I think today it was going to be deer burgers, which is my favourite, and this pony's going in the wrong direction. Fat Bodkin. The fort is the other way. But whatever it was that was chasing them didn't want them to go back to the fort, so it was chasing them further and further and further into the badwoods. "Does anyone know we're out here?" cried Bodkin, who had drawn his bow and was shooting at desperate arrows upwards, even though he was a terrible shot and he couldn't see where he was shooting. "Will they send out search parties?" "I'm afraid not," said Wish, squinting upwards, trying to work out what was pursuing them. "Well, not until the morning, anyway. I told my mother I was going to bed with a headache." "Brilliant," said Bodkin. "Brilliant! As if it happens, I think I can feel a bit of a headache coming on myself. Don't worry, Princess. You mustn't worry. I'm here to protect you." Wish shook the spoon at whatever was following them. She may have been a somewhat weird warrior, Princess, but she certainly had courage. "You better not follow us, whatever you are," shouted Wish at the terrifying screeching nothingness, "for we are armed with an enchanted spoon." "The sword, Princess," murmured Bodkin through white lips. "The sword sounds more scary." "And the sword," shouted Wish, waving the sword in her right hand and the spoon in her left. "A sword is so dangerous it was locked in my mother's dungeons." But what that, if anything, seemed to encourage whatever was following them even more, for the wind above them gave a hungry whine and rushed after them even faster. "Never fear, Princess," cried Bodkin, shaking so much with anxiety that he could barely load his bow. "This is a bad situation, but I will save you, for as I am personal assistant bodyguard to the Princess, I have been trained in the most advanced arts of bodyguarding." Unfortunately, Bodkin discovered in those desperate moments that he had a terrible disadvantage as a potential bodyguard. He had a medical condition that caused him to fall asleep in situations of extreme danger. He had barely said the last words of that brave speech before he collapsed on the Princess's shoulder, snoring loudly. "Bodkin!" shrieked the Princess. "What are you doing?" "Bodkin!" shrieked Wish. "Wake up now!" Bodkin woke up with a start, mumbling, "Where? What? How?" "Badwoods!" panted the Princess. "Being chased! Something terrible! Advanced arts of bodyguarding!" "Oh, yes. I've been carefully trained for exactly these sorts of life or death emergencies," cried Bodkin, fitting another arrow into his bow and unfortunately falling asleep again at the moment of aiming it, so that he tipped forward and accidentally shot the poor pony in the hindquarters. The pony squealed protestingly at the arrow as the arrow grazed his bottom, and then ran on in wild desperation through the pitch-dark forest. Wish's heart was beating faster like a rabbit's, and she didn't even notice when the brambles shredded her clothes to ribbons and tore long, painful scratches into her legs. The pony came upon an ice-cold stream and forced his way through the briars and splashed down into it, though the cold of the water burned them all like fire, in the hope of that whatever was following them would be put off the scent. The pony clambered out on the other side and ran on through the darkness. "Oh, murmuring mistletoe," thought Wish in terror. "I should never have done this. Magic is banned for a reason. Warriors are not allowed out after dark for a reason. Iron Warrior Fort is built like it is for a reason." She could feel her heart beating so hard it felt like any moment it would break out of her chest. "Faster, faster," urged Wish. So choked with panic she could barely breathe. The pony galloped into a sudden clearing in the forest. The whining of this strange wind had an edge to it now, like the painful scritch of chalk on stone, a sound that grew louder as if building up to attack. Louder and louder the noise grew. Screech! There was an extraordinary noise, as if the very air itself was being torn apart like a giant piece of paper. Terrified, Wish turned her face upward to confront the attack with her drawn sword. There was a shout from behind, a human voice, and suddenly everything happened very quickly. And that is where I'm going to leave it. So we're going to start chapter 3 tomorrow on page 70. I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you have a fun rest of the day, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Goodbye.